Welcome, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Alberta Founders Podcast. Woohoo! We actually stuck till episode 3. Today, we have our guest, Leece, over here. AJ was actually one of our mentors for the Alberta Catalyzer program. He was the one who was one of the mentors for the students, and we have learned a lot from AJ. He's kind enough to give us the time today and speak to us on this Alberta Founder Podcast, and we would like to welcome AJ. So welcome, AJ, to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Hem. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining us, AJ. So this will be a fun session.
That's good.
Fun. Yeah, we'll go in the nooks and crannies, and we'll be asking you questions that not many regular podcasts ask these days. So
as long as nobody looks in the nooks and crannies too deep. I haven't vacuumed recently.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, AJ, can you tell the audience what exactly is your business and what does it do?
Yeah, I'm the founder and managing director of Brekade, the business resiliency arcade, where our mission is simple. We design and build video games that make the boring parts of your business just a whole lot more fun and entertaining while keeping them accessible for everybody in your organization. So our initial offerings were started in the cybersecurity space, where we wanted to take all the really boring stuff that a security program really needed to do at the foundational level and make it so that anybody in the business could now understand and immediately see the value that work would have. And 5 years on, still cruising, still making cool stuff, coming up with all kinds of new ideas and more on the way.
Wow, that's great. So it would be great to say it's in the video game industry. Is that right?
Yeah, I occupy kind of a strange shoulder space. It's there's a little bit of business consulting, actually a lot of consulting, a fair amount of information security, kind of insight and awareness training. There's also some aspect of, lots of video game designs, a lot of automation behind the scenes in the business as well. So it occupies kind of this weird space. It's mostly an experiment that I started, which was along the lines of, if work didn't have to be so terrible for us to do. If we could design and build a workspace for ourselves that was really fun and interesting, where people were basically really happy to see you and actually carve out sort of some meaningful work with it. And then that's what came about. So it occupies a lot of weird space because I wanted it to be a weird thing.
Well, that's good to know. All right. So this is where we go ahead and start with the absolute nooks and crannies of the questions. So what's the one thing that annoys you the most about your business at this stage? Is it sending the emails or talking to prospects or making more marketing videos? What is the one thing that single-handedly annoys you the most at this point?
So creating content is definitely at the top of the list, which is why I'm really glad that I'm here, because somebody else comes up with the ideas and I just provide a layer of contribution. So that works for me. But the piece that I absolutely hated the most, and to some extent still continue to hate, just also happens to be the absolute most important part of the business, that without it, the entire business collapses on itself. And so some of my video games have these storied events where we're telling a story of what happens to a company in cybersecurity terms. And those events are at the intersection of creativity, technical feasibility, applicability to a scenario, and some degree of stand-up comedy, all baked into one 3 to 5 line snippet that I have to write, throughout the course of the scenario. Rarely do those 4 pillars ever intersect on their own. So sitting down to write these events historically was something that I always hated. I'd put it off to the last minute. I still hate it. But the way that I solved it was I developed a tool that allowed me to write those events anywhere that those 4 pillars would intersect organically. So I built an app with a citizen developer suite. This predates ChatGPT and all this vibe coding stuff, which probably would have made that process a lot easier. So I did it the old-fashioned way, and I cobbled this thing together so that I could take it on my phone and I could do the most important part of my job that I hated the most wherever I wanted. And I frequently test that, while I'm waiting for beer and chicken wings on a Wednesday afternoon, taking the train into downtown, waiting for an oil change, anywhere where I basically had some time to kill. I didn't want to kind of sit around and mindlessly scroll. I still wanted to get some meaningful work done. But what that gave me was also sort of the freedom and the flexibility. knowing that one way or another, I was going to have to sit down and write these little events. I might as well just do it when inspiration strikes, immediately save the information right into the business, and then it's immediately accessible whenever I need it, thus shortening the amount of time I used to spend doing that. So I still hate doing it, but it's a lot easier than it ever used to be.
So would it be fair to say that a founder has to wear multiple hats in the beginning stages?
Oh, 100%. Another founder friend of mine really laid it out. He said, in every startup, you have a hipster, a hacker, and a hustler. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to separate those hats into 3 distinct people, kudos. In my situation, I have to be all of the above. So yeah, you really do have to wear a lot of different hats in a lot of different contexts. And in some cases, you might have to wear all 3 in a single day. So that can be a little exhausting. So any shortcuts, anything you can do to make your life easier is a competitive advantage.
No, absolutely. The next one is, which specific problem that you would want to magically disappear one day?
That one would definitely be creating content. I can't get rid of the game events because I need those for everything that I do. But it is one of those pieces where, I have a lot to say. I have a ton to demonstrate. I have a lot of really cool stories and neat business pieces. But just sitting around and coming up with it, I honestly, I hate it. I couldn't be bothered. So it's one of those, if that problem didn't need to be here, like somebody else took it off my hands entirely, or, some magical AI showed up and did most of that work for me, which I'm sure there's a half dozen tools by the time this gets recorded and released. So who knows, if somebody wants to tell me what they got going on, that'd be cool. But yeah, it really creating content for me is one of those, if somebody shows up and says, play me 10 songs, it'll be no problem. If I have to sit there and figure out the 10 songs I want to play, it'll take me forever. So I tend to just hate that one the most.
Yeah, no, that's the part most of the people have in common with the content. And there's so many apps these days. There's the TikTok, totally. There's LinkedIn, there's YouTube, there's one starting with Slack. Like there's a sales step or something that's happening these days. It's a competitor of LinkedIn. I didn't even know about it till yesterday. I'm like, oh, that's Sales Stack. That's the one. And they're trying to replace LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
That's interesting. Okay. Yeah. And who knows, maybe it's a fresh channel. Maybe it's a change of scenery. Maybe it's something that says, hey, sit down and write these 4 things. And then I cobble together an app that makes that easier for me so I can do it while I'm waiting for everything else to come around in orbit. But who knows? We'll see what that problem looks like. So far, it hasn't really come up, but we're starting to get to a point where I got to look at that. So.
Yeah, because I struggled a lot myself with making videos. That's why I started with TikTok, where I just write stuff so they can just see things on the paper. Okay. And at least that works in a way.
Yeah. So. And I've thought about producing a series of cartoons, like web cartoons, that I would use to basically get my games a little bit more airtime, show off some of the mascots that live within it, and then use it as a way to throw shade at work to some degree. So we'll look for that in the new year. I think I'll pull the trigger on that and make that happen.
Oh, absolutely. Well, the next one, AJ, is, do you have, just like most of the founders, the shiny object syndrome, or do you have it or you don't have it, and how do you tackle it?
So the short answer is yes. If I had a nickel for every half-finished project, I could hire Warren Buffett to clean my cat box. And how do you combat that as a founder? Well, the short answer is, there's a lot of people who I think try to swim upstream on that problem. They think it's something they're not supposed to do. And in short, I actually would counter with, no, it is something you're supposed to do, but it's a double-edged sword. It's a power that must be wielded responsibly in a business. And so I have so many ideas, and some of them I would actually sit down and start working on them, and they manifested into something totally different than what I had envisioned. And others were just, I spent a couple hours on this. It turns out I actually hate it. That shiny object syndrome is definitely an Achilles heel for a lot of startups. My advice would be understanding when it's an idea that you can't really get out of your head, where it's one where you kind of dare I say, dream about it when you're sleeping. You can't help kind of thinking about it, talking about it. If it's really that sticky and it is really kind of a part of your core business vision, then don't be shy about carving out a little bit of time in order to do that. But the best way to figure out what that looks like is understand what the most important parts of your business really are. How does your business actually make money? Who do you sell to? All of these basics. Once you have a handle on some of those, that shiny object syndrome now gets a little bit more tactical in your business, and it gets you a little more direct in new and wonderful ideas. And case in point, I'm considering a whole new market vertical, which at this stage is probably asking for a lot of trouble, but it's also realizing that sometimes your buyers aren't quite ready for what you have, or finding the right buyers might be a little bit tricky, but you stumble across some opportunities because you got a little weird with your business. So, handle it responsibly. Absolutely. Understand when you're just coming up with ideas, because you don't want to finish the work that you're supposed to be doing, but realize that sometimes these weird, shiny objects that come across your life actually do serve a valuable purpose for founders.
Absolutely. Is there any metrics you recommend that they should use to tackle this syndrome? Should they say like, oh, this is 10% of my business, or this will bring me more ROI, I should do this or shouldn't do that? Like, what do you recommend they should do?
Yeah, if you look at something like, let's say you want to move into a new market space with what you have, looking at the size of that market obviously makes sense. Looking at who might be purchasing or how also makes a lot of sense. But you should also really ask yourself this question: have you actually encountered some things that you might be ignoring? And that's the piece where you just have to kind of sit and listen to people who might come in contact with your business, who might not be the right buyers, but who might project some very interesting pieces into what they think. That listening piece is really, really important for sure.
Like listening, that aspect just opens doors, and you didn't realize that was there.
Yeah, it's sort of weird, but a lot of how I've built this business came simply from listening to the people that encountered the first rounds of what I was doing in the very early stages, kind of while I was slightly past MVP, but not quite into anything else. And just listening to what they had to say about what we had done. And that really helped me understand what I had accomplished and where this needed to go. But I was bad at it's a good way to put it. I was really bad at kind of internalizing that advice into the business. And it wasn't until I went through the Catalyzer program that it helped me really see, this is what works, this is what doesn't, and this is what I should be focusing my effort on. And then from there, the new shiny stuff, that really started to make sense. Okay, I want to build these things. I want to do this. I want to solve that. Then that, is it in line with my core business values? Does it make sense from a revenue perspective, as in, can I wrap a buck around it? Is the market space for it large enough? Has anybody actually talked to me about this idea in passing or in a business context? And I think it's good. So some of those metrics aren't really hard and fast ones, like, do you have $10 million laying around for this problem? Some of it might be these simple like human considerations. Has anybody come up and said, what about this? What about that? Has somebody asked you if your product or your offering can solve this problem? Those are some of the pieces that can help you hone that skill without leading yourself astray too often.
So always listen to your customers.
Yeah, customers, mentors, but also in some way listen to yourself. And I know this advice is probably like circling back on itself like crazy. But that's just, it's weird. It's kind of hard to describe. It's sort of like, as a founder, you have to build an intuition for when a direction makes sense. And sometimes the only way you can do it is by screwing up. And in that process, learning something, and hopefully it isn't too expensive, but realizing that you, a business owner, you, the entrepreneur, the founder, whatever, however you choose to identify, you have the vision of what you wanted to do. You set out to do something with this. What is it, right? So that North Star really is important. But again, it's not the only thing. Maybe in broad video game terms, the main quest is important, but don't forget the side quests, because sometimes there's really good loot in there too. Just be careful not to let it consume everything and take you off track.
Yeah, no, side quests. I've heard that being a couple of times. Bro's just completing a side quest.
Life is good with side quests, right? I have all kinds of side quest achievements in my history that make it, very interesting. So yeah, I'd say don't get too hung up on it, but don't let it own you, because it can shut you down if you're not careful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, based on what you just said about intuition and vision, we've got the next question. What's the most mentally exhausting part of your business that only you know about, but no one actually sees?
Well, again, right back to any of the customization and event creation, right? That's why that was the most important part. But it is mentally taxing because it requires me to sit down and think like a business consultant, like a cybersecurity professional, like an attacker, and like an entertainer. And those are really hard to do kind of all at once. So those do wind up being pretty mentally taxing. One of the biggest things, again, is making my tools super easy to use so that the friction behind doing that work is really trivial. And realizing that, yes, it's really important, but over time, it becomes less important because as long as I learn from what I've done, save the work that I've done over time, I kind of achieve this bell curve where it's like, yeah, most of that work is already done. So I would say for building a business kind of in simple general terms, that blazing of your own trail is far and away one of the most mentally taxing things that people just don't see. Oh, it's amazing. Overnight success, like 10 years in the making is sort of the common problem, right? And it's, all the time that you spend with your head down, grinding it out, trying to build something, line up an idea, figure out if it works. Like all of this trailblazing is probably without a doubt the most tedious, difficult, and easily not seen thing until it all shows up. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're down in the trenches, when you're actually struggling and learning, do you do anything that gives you that sudden mood of happiness? Is it an ice cream or a push-up, or you listen to a podcast or you watch a YouTube video? What gives you that smile, that little happiness when you're down in the trenches?
I didn't get into this business to do push-ups. It's the nonstop sitting and snacking that works. I do go wall climbing from time to time, which is again a bit of an interesting observation. But it's not one thing. It's sort of one collection of things that I do, and it just dovetails into rituals, right? What are your rituals for whatever it is you're doing? When I was building my business, one of the things that I found really helpful was if I'm changing hats, right? If I'm doing a lot of that context switching, if today I have to be, a techie person for the first half of the day to solve a few tech problems, and then I have to get on a handful of sales calls or what have you in the afternoon, baking in a little bit of time to just mentally switch gears. And in my case, it's just taking my dogs for a walk, or, sitting and listening to something, or just kind of like taking a step away. One thing that's actually really, really useful is doing a simple chore, like washing the dishes, vacuuming, any of these simple chores where you don't really have to think about what to do unless, you're using maybe electricity in a faulty circuit. But for the most part, there's an expected outcome, an expected end, a very clear progression. So as a nice mental break from sort of that trailblazing problem, you're doing something where you already have those answers, and it's something you can just crank out of the park. You got to get it done anyway, but it's super simple, and it just kind of helps with that reset a little bit. So, do your chores, right? Go outside, touch some grass, like basically all these natural things that we're kind of supposed to do. I just make a point of doing it if I'm doing any of the context switching, or if it was a particularly onerous piece of work that I finished, I'll hang it up for the day and go do that.
That little switch, that pivot is very necessary when you're thinking of that sort. Yeah, I just get a DQ. Well,
listen, that will add up in a hurry, both financially and health-wise. So I don't know. It's just their portion. From one professional to another, this job is a lot of sitting and a lot of sleepless nights, and that'll hit your midsection faster than you think. Take the aware of that.
Just a regular blizzard once in a while, but
once in a while, fair enough. Yeah, that's it. Who might have? Okay. Part of my business model includes going to a bar where I call it my office. So whatever gets you there. So,
whatever works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And the next one is, what is one thing that you thought would be extremely easy in the beginning, that it looked easy, but it was way harder than you expected?
Finding and retaining and selling to customers was, so when you start a business, especially if you're doing something weird and wonderful like I was, the very first iterations of my product actually did not look at all like video games. They looked more like inside web tools, right? Just like good old fashioned websites. But I ran it like a video game. I ran it like a consultant presentation with the game assistants and everything like that. The first 2 years, the customers came naturally. They knew somebody that needed somebody, and I was that somebody. And with that, the stuff just kind of kept flowing in. Everything was good. But every business, when you get over, a certain hump, that hype cycle really dies down. Some of your existing clients don't come back. Maybe they get acquired. Maybe the people who brought you in have left. So there's a lot of change that you're not really privy to. All of it happens to impact your business. So yeah, at the very early stages, finding customers was actually really simple. And then as it sort of wore on, it became terribly, terribly difficult. So that was a hard thing to get through.
Oh, absolutely. And do you recommend any advice for newcomers or students who are just starting? They have no idea what to build to begin with. They don't know what is marketing. They don't know where should they find customers? Like, what should they do as a first step?
Yep. Find a problem and get super nerdy about solving it. And when I say that, I mean, it makes sense if you have some domain knowledge right off the hop. So I was coming at this problem from about 10 years of varied cybersecurity experience, some of which included teaching. And with it, I also had some business acumen from having been something of a business decision maker and having gone to business school. So life experience is definitely one of the best things you can do. And in it, start looking around for these $1 million problems that may live in an ecosystem somewhere. You kind of see a big difference between somebody coming out and getting their first startup and, they haven't really had much in the way of work. And it's a to-do list process or, some kind of AI thing. And it's like, okay, that's really neat, but what problem are you actually solving, where and who? And that's a fundamental of building a business. That's always been the fundamentals, but it isn't really well defined in a lot of places because they teach you a lot, especially in business school, they teach you how to operate in a business, but running a business is a whole different kettle of fish. So your best bet is if you find a problem and you find that you're spending a lot of time on this problem, you personally are spending a lot of time, that's probably something you should start digging into a little bit, start pulling on some of those threads. Because again, that domain knowledge, that baked in problem thing, don't just pick something and get after it because you lack the credibility most often. You probably will miss the problem in the nuanced fashion that actually turns around and generates sales. And then you're out, you're done, right? You have, you spent your time building something and you didn't really see what you were trying to do. So get super nerdy about the problem. Always, always, always. Never stop.
Because the thing is, as they actually make the thing and they have to sell it, if they themselves don't know about it, how the heck can you sell it?
Well, that's it. If you don't actually know what problem you're really trying to solve here, what value are you bringing to this conversation? Exactly, right?
Exactly, yeah.
And if you're sitting across the table from somebody like me and you're trying to sell me something that your tooling does, everybody always comes up with some kind of tech product because, they're cheap to build, you can iterate fast, and you don't actually have to have a warehouse for any of it. So it's one of those things where most founders will start building some kind of tech solution. But remember that you're coming to me, a business decision maker now. And, I've been in this space for a long time and I might have 10 or 15 tools in my environment that all do sort of the same things.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're asking me to buy another one, onboard you as a company, solve it. And like you claim to solve your problem better than in some cases, this $1 billion company that's been doing it for longer because you have some kind of X factor. But you can't really define what that is. And, I have to basically bring you into my ecosystem for at least the next 5 years before you're meaningful in my business. And it's not lost on me that it took me about 5 years to get to the point where I'm seeing some genuine traction, because one of the conversations that really inevitably comes up is, will your business even be here in 5 years? And that's not anybody trying to tear you down. That's just the reality of where we're at, right? If your tool really does solve all these problems and I get rid of all these other ones that my team is used to using, I bring yours in, I teach them how to use it, they get familiar with it, it starts working, and all of a sudden your cash flow dries up, I have a much bigger problem. So I, the business owner, I'm going to go, well, we're hobbling along just fine with these 10 tools. One of them is a spreadsheet on somebody's desk that the CFO understands, and that's the person that signs everybody's paychecks. Thanks, whatever your tooling is, great. So getting super nerdy about this problem is really vital, because then that helps you find the customers willing to take a chance on what it is you're doing. That helps keep you in business as you move along too.
Well, absolutely. If you don't have an X factor, how can you survive your first 2, 3, 4 years, whatever, and you would just wash down? So
that's it. Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to The next one. Well, as a founder in your beginning years, what advice have you gotten or did you get at that time from people that still turns on your BS meter?
Yeah. It's not so much one single piece of advice. One thing I'll tell people, and I guess maybe it's a little ironic that we're on a podcast giving advice, but you're going to get a lot of advice from a lot of people who have no skin in the game. None. They're going to sit there and go, have you thought about doing this? Should you consider it? Like, that's pretty dumb. You should take an existing product and put a fancier clock in it. You're going to get just an absolute ton of advice, a ton of really bad advice from people who, again, they don't have to pay your bills. They don't have to talk to your customers. They don't have any idea what you're trying to build or where you're going with it. And so you're going to get a lot of really bad advice. And understanding what bad advice looks like and what good advice looks like is yet another skill you as a founder will have to cultivate. But it is, again, one of those things where your mission, your vision, those are the pieces that sort of keep you grounded. The hearing from your customers, because your customers will give you something like, have you considered putting it over here? Have you considered adding this? Have you considered doing these things? Again, you want to hear those things, but you don't want to commit your whole business in those directions. So it's like walking a tightrope. People are going to give you a lot of advice. Most of it's probably going to be bad. Understanding who you can really trust, right, is going to be an important skill again to cultivate. Realizing that there's all kinds of resources like podcasts like this, where I have no skin in your business game. I'm just telling you how things went from the way that I built and my perspective and my journey. And if that makes sense to you, the listener, then that's good. That's okay. Then carry on. But again, just understanding that sometimes there's a grift, sometimes people have no skin in the game, and just realizing that, you're going to get burned on this a couple of times. The best thing you can do is find a way to weather those problems.
And they should never take advice from people who have never actually done it or done anything for that part.
Yeah. Building a business and running a business, or operating within a business, they're two very different headspaces. And I don't think that people who've never built a business have nothing to offer. But it is definitely one of those things where, when it comes to some of the really big major business decisions, definitely talk to people who've actually built something. Hopefully
done something with them. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If somebody built something and it failed, that's a good conversation to have. If somebody built something and it succeeded, that's a great one too. Having built something, I think, is a bit of a barometer for good versus bad advice. But even in that case, you will still get bad advice that can still happen. So again, just hone that skill. It takes practice.
Absolutely. Okay, now we move on to the next part of the podcast, which is our rapid fire round.
Lightning round. 50.
Exactly. No, we don't have points for you.
What's all this been about?
We'll give you points at the end, I guess. Yeah. So we'll have a couple questions, and you ideally should be answering in just 1 or 2 words.
Got it.
2 to 3 words maximum, whatever comes to your mind, so you can just spit it out.
Yeah, 4 to 6 words. 10 to 20 word.
All right, here we go. One tool that you swear by.
The Microsoft Power Suite.
Okay. One tool you would never use again.
Never use again?
Because you're so annoyed and frustrated by it.
I actually don't have that answer. I don't know if there's a tool that I'd never ever use again. I'm pretty picky about tool selection. I actually don't have an answer for that one.
Okay. Your favorite book?
For founders or just in general?
Oh, it's general as what's AJ's favorite book?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's favorite. One book that I would tell every founder to read, though, is Rework.
Rework?
It's all Rework. It's all about the story of 37 Signals. The author's name escapes me at the moment. But that was a very important book that I was reading very, very early on, which helped me understand the type of business I wanted to grow. Sorry, that was more than 2 words, but that one needed more context.
All right. Favorite food?
Anything I don't have to cook, basically. Especially if it's sat in a deep fryer for a while.
Okay, nice. What metrics do you check the most in your business?
I don't keep good track of it, but the amount of time that I saved with my automation. That's the one I pay attention to the most.
Automation metrics. Okay.
Yeah.
And one thing that saved you more than once in your business?
Remember that intuition thing? Yeah, that founder's intuition of a good deal versus a bad deal, good advice versus bad advice, and cultivating that into a skill where I can turn anything into an opportunity. Again, more words, but that's a heavy answer.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Now we're almost at the end over here. Any advice you would like to give to a student who's listening this for the first time, who's seeing both me and you for the first time, or any first-time founder who just have an idea and they want to do something? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, anybody can run a business, but it really is not work for everyone. It really, if you hate your job, trying to cultivate your own customers and your own product, and your own systems and your own everything, while making no money, is definitely not for the faint of heart. So if you're about to do this, it is one of those things where, again, if you really have a problem to solve and you have a true desire to just dig in, get gritty, really find yourself to some extent in the process, then yeah, do it. I mean, realizing that by the time you're done, no matter where your business went, good or bad, you'll definitely at least have a story. You'll have learned a whole lot along the way. You probably, if you've done it correctly, will have made good connections. And in those, that's growth, and that's direction, that's momentum. And then, maybe that sets you up for something else. Maybe now you can start talking into a higher class of work that you're trying to get to, wherever you got to go. But it can be a lot of fun, like setting up your own thing and being the only person involved, which I say because I'm revenue only and I'm bootstrapping. So I don't actually have a boss. I am the boss. And, every once in a while I have to do something that my clients want, but that's about it. And, the fun piece of it is, I get to lean into these shirts that I'm wearing because, somebody once told me, no, if your business is fun, then why don't you look like you're having fun? Like, oh, that's kind of a good idea. If I'm selling fun, I should look like I sell fun, not like I have a standing 2 p.m. in front of Congress every Tuesday. So it gave me a chance to really kind of like explore myself to some degree while I was doing it and have a lot of fun in the process. And then with it, solve a problem that actually really needed solving that people really like to talk about. Since building this, I have gone to international conferences and been a piece of their startup program there. I have deals in progress with enormous companies that have touched every single one of our lives. If you've used an ounce of electricity in the last 10 seconds, you will have interacted with their products. We are now in conversation. All these really amazing companies that would have been off limits had I not leaned into what really worked with the business and kind of done what I had done. So yeah, I guess if I had to sum it up, I'd say running your own business is definitely an experience worth $1 million, where if somebody offered you a quarter for it, you might consider taking that, right? A wonderful thing. If I had to go back and do it all over again, I don't know that it would change a thing. I think I would get to some of this identity piece a little bit faster. I think I would be just a little more confident, a little more bold to lean into it. And I probably would have rebranded a lot sooner. I think I would have done that a lot earlier. And yeah, just leaned all the way into what made the business awesome and forget the stuff that wasn't selling anyway. Just prune it away easier and make my peace with it faster.
Okay, wonderful. And final question is, what's next for your business and what should be looking out for?
Yeah, more video games are on the way, right? Like I said, we're leaning really hard into this video game thing. It started as an idea and we generated customers, revenue growth, and everything with it. So we pretty much pruned off just about everything else that the business does and only quietly offer to a handful of people that come asking. For the most part, it's just more video games. So retooling some of our existing ones. We have a new product coming out, which takes companies through their incident response plan or lack thereof, so that they can be better equipped for a cyber incident inside their organization. So a cybersecurity focused video game that helps you, the business, figure out exactly what you have to do. It'll cost you less than a day's worth of consulting and delivers about as much as 2 weeks of what you would expect from any boutique consulting shop. And you'd have to do the work with them anyway. At least this way you can do it outside of a boardroom. So, really cool things on the way. New video games focused in non-security domains. We have been challenged by some potential customers to see if we can make the employee onboarding process a lot more fun. So there is a game design progress for that. And marketing games are starting to show up. We have companies asking if we can design and build some games for them to help market their own business. can you build a game that people would now get a sense for what we're like in video game fashion and use it as a marketing vehicle, something we've been doing since we've been building them. So yeah, absolutely. More of that on the way.
Wow, that's very interesting. Well, thanks so much for joining today at the session, AJ. I'm pretty sure all the students learned a lot of things, so then they will implement your action plans, learn something from you. They learn something from your journey, and they will try to do something with their founders' vision or ideas that they have at this point.
Never stop learning. That's the best way to grow a business, without a doubt.
Hey, wonderful. Thanks so much for joining, AJ.